Hello everyone, Rich Hagan here at the news desk on Thursday night, no less, with Hall of Fame Mr. Randy Buehler. And Randy, it's crystal ball time. We get on the eve of the Pro Tour to talk about standard for tomorrow and moving forward in this brand new Khans of Tarkir format. But first, never mind as a Hall of Famer, never mind as one of the great deck building minds in the history of the game, as a fan, how excited are you for standard?
I have never been this excited about any constructed Pro Tour. Like the unveiling that's going to happen tomorrow, it's about to happen by the time we play this. I mean, no one knows what's going to happen. It might be round 4 might be the most exciting round in the history of the Pro Tour.
Wow.
This rotation has got to be the most impactful standard rotation that has ever been. Khans has added all kinds of toys. It's a super deep set. You know, over fully 25 cards I was thinking about that I could imagine being in the top 5. Mm-hmm. And the way the rotation lines up with so many cards leaving and all of the decks that were dominating standard basically don't work anymore, it's going to be awesome.
Well, why don't we take a look at what isn't in standard anymore? What's gone?
Yeah, no, that's definitely where the story starts for standard right now. No more Sphinx's Revelation, no more Supreme Verdict. So the reign of that sort of awesome Esper control deck is basically over. Even Flock is, you know, put the cherry on the top for that archetype. I mean, maybe you can still play a control deck, but only maybe. It's not even clear there's any deck left after those cards leave. Pack Rat is gone. Nobody's going to lose the turn 2 Pack Rat anymore. That's kind of awesome. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, Nightveil Spectre, the fact that the hybrid cards rotated out means a lot of the devotion strategies that were so good last year, they don't work. Like, Mono Blue Devotion doesn't have anything with enough blue mana pips. Mono Black Devotion doesn't have anything with enough black mana pips. And Lifebane Zombie's not going to be stealing green creatures out of your hand anymore. So it's just like the gates have opened up. You just get to have more fun now.
Which sounds awesome, but although they've gone, it isn't just Khans of Tarkir that's in the format, so what's still around?
Yeah, I definitely think that, you know, the big players that are left over, you know, Thoughtseize was a huge player. I actually think it's a little bit weaker this year than it was last year, just because there'll be a lot more mid-range decks, but Goblin Rabblemaster broke out. He's awesome and is to continue to be awesome. The big story, though, I mean, Caryatid and Courser. You know, we saw 28 copies of those cards in the top 8 in Atlanta. You know, I don't think we're going to see quite as many here because obviously you've got all of Khans to play with, but by far the most defining cards on this standard are the leftover green cards, Courser and Caryatid. I think that's just a big deal. Everybody knows fetchlands came in, that makes Courser even a little bit better. Khans didn't have as much sauce for the green decks as for the other colors, though. So, I mean, it's still super open and interesting. But yeah, Courser is definitely a big player, probably the best card in Standard right now.
Every new format has its selection of new mechanics that become very important, but not always keyword mechanics. And you've chosen to highlight a keyword mechanic that's been around since the absolute dawn of the game.
Yeah, well, what did I just say the best cards in the format are, right?
Courser,
Sylvan Caryatid, you know, Courser of Krufix. Those cards clog up the ground. It is hard to attack on the ground, so go to the air. You can fly over those, and like the assortment of flying creatures that are available right now, there's a lot of them. I mean, you've got leftovers like Herald of Torment, and Stormbreath Dragon is still a big deal. Hornet Queen is actually showing up in a bunch of different lists. Green Devotion can play that, and sometimes you're just like, well, my monsters deck just, you know what, we get to that much mana sometimes. Here's a Hornet Queen. What are you going to do about all these guys? So I definitely think having the ability to take your offense to the air, to just fly over these ground stalls, and I mean, some of these cards are super aggressive, 3 and 4 mana cards as well, so I think flying is actually really important right now. I mean, that obviously the ability's been around forever, since the beginning. I'm not sure it's ever been better.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to get into a top dozen or so cards, and this is where we get into proper speculation mode. But there's a lot of depth to Khans of Tarkir, right?
Yeah, no, I thought I was going to do a top 10 list. I wound up doing a top 12 list with a couple of honorable mention slides.
Okay.
Like I said, I think it's actually really hard to figure out what's, you know, the top 1, the top 5 cards from Khans because it's such a deep set. So, I mean, you look at cards that didn't make the cut from what wound up being a top 12, you know, End Hostilities is going to show up. Right, that's the best Wrath of God that's in the format right now. So it's going to show up. If anybody can play blue-white control, you know, I'm sure some people will try it. And then you got a card like Jeskai's Ascendancy. Like, Jeskai's Ascendancy is clearly going to be a big player in some of the older formats. I don't know if it's good enough to make the cut in Standard or not. I think a lot of people it's one of the cards people are curious about. You know, let's find out. Can you actually run Jeskai's Ascendancy in Standard? You know, and here I don't even have it in the top 12 because that's an open question right now. So
Yeah, presumably it has to be one of those cards that if you don't want to be in with 200 other people on some kind of base caryatid Corsair plan, that this is a card that you could potentially pin your hopes on.
Yeah, you could actually say that Caryatid is the card that's going to get the most played, because you're playing Caryatid in the Jeskai Ascendancy.
Yeah, okay, sure.
So, you know, I've been wondering how many Corsairs or Crewfix are going to be in the top 8. The Caryatids may actually be the most played card in the top 8 if Ascendancy's any good. But I mean, we don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out if Ascendancy's actually good enough to play or not.
Yeah.
Right now, I've got it at honorable mention. I've got it at maybe status.
Yeah, I personally, I hope that goes up, because I like me a little bit of combo action. Red hot combo in the top 8. I'd have one of them in there. Yeah. I don't want 6. A Jeskai Ascendancy deck in the top 8 could be kind of fun. What else we got? Honorable mentions.
Yeah, no, there's a bunch of creatures here. You know, Seeker of the Way can be very good in a sort of aggressive Jeskai deck. You know, Anafenza can come out and do lots of things. You know, Wingmate Rock is just such insane value for that card, and it's only in one color. So I mean, I definitely think that there's a lot of Necropolis Fiend can show up in the Delve deck. Just such a deep set and such a wide open format. So all kinds of new toys to play with.
Awesome stuff. Come on then, give us the top dozen, count them down, and we'll see how we go. Good luck with this.
Yeah, oh yeah, clearly out on a lot of limbs here, very skinny limbs.
Absolutely.
I've got Bloodsoaked Champion 12. I think that Bloodsoaked Champion is incredibly powerful. You know, the fact that it's a 1-mana 2/1 that just keeps coming back with that raid trigger. You know, this is as good as a 1-drop can be. The only reason I have it all the way down at 12 is that, you know what? It gets blocked by Corsair, it gets blocked by Caryatid. I don't know how good the aggro decks are actually going to be. I think that we're going to see a format which is really, really mid-rangey and kind of grindy. And, you know, Bloodsoaked is okay in a grind battle, but if there's just a million 2/4s and 0/3s blocking it, you know, this is really how good Bloodsoaked Champion is, comes down to how good, you know, mono black aggro, you know, maybe red black aggro. If you want 1-mana 2 power guys, you know, a lot of us will call them Jackal Pups, really sort of the first really good 1-mana 2 power guy. You can get like 20 Jackal Pups in a deck these days. And it's like, which Jackal Pups do you want to play with? Well, this is probably the best one, but we'll find out how good the archetype actually is.
Yeah, I guess the thing with the champion is that if it's getting blocked by a Caryatid turn after turn, then, well, that's kind of okay, because that means the Caryatid isn't blocking something else of yours, and it's just having one more, and once you get 2 of those going, of course,
So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know, that, all right, 11. Now this is a card I can get behind, Savage Knuckleblade.
Absolutely, Savage Knuckleblade. It's this guy's 3-mana 4/4 with 3 different positive abilities. This guy is nuts. It's another one where I've got him at 11th because I don't know if there's the right deck. You know, is Temur really the clan that's going to show up? You know, you see a lot of people playing a lot of different base green decks. I don't know if there's enough blue cards to pull you into Temur. If it is, by the way, the card that this guy will also carry into high numbers is Stubborn Denial. Like,
oh, the counter spell.
Suddenly, 1 mana counter your planeswalker. 1 mana, it's 1 mana negate essentially. If you have the Ferocious, like negate has seen lots of play. So, you know, Savage Knuckleblade, it's one of those nice, like, it's a Brian Kibler card, right? It can be down, it can play defense, you know, it can do all kinds of different things. So,
if you add up the mana symbols on that card, ignoring the casting cost itself, you have 7. 2 and a green, 2 and a blue, red. So there's quite a lot of combinations there. When do you see this being played? Is this just an automatic 4/4 on turn 3 without the ability to return it, without the ability to give it haste? Are people going to just play it on 3, or are people going to be looking to build decks in a way that lets them play something else on 3, and this is a 4/4 haste on 4?
I think that if it's a totally reasonable turn 3 play. If your hand says this is your 3-drop, you just run it out. Make them answer it, right? Maybe you get to untap, maybe you get an attack with it, that's awesome. You know, if you have a different turn 3 play, like maybe you have a Corsair in your hand and you're flanking, you've got the red mana to give it haste and attack on turn 4, maybe you slow roll it because you have a different 3-drop, but you don't need to wait to have the abilities turned on for this card to be good. If that's just the thing that you're playing on turn 3, it's totally fine. You know, you don't have to leave the shields up. The shields in particular, the return shield, the 3 mana to bring it back to your hand, that's really the kind of thing that kicks in the long game. Yeah. That's how the deck helps you win. If you get into some kind of stall, some sort of mid-range kind of grindy game, this guy gives you that sort of long-term advantage, can give you that inevitability. But I mean, plan A is just do the savage part, right?
Yes.
Just run him out there and start turning him sideways.
Yeah, tried at a number of different development costs, and yeah, well, they're all really good. Now, at 10, this is the first of our land cycle that we're going to highlight here. how important, Randy, is mana base and land mix and what people choose to play going to be in determining the destiny of this Pro Tour?
Yeah, it's huge. I'm not sure there have been this many options for lands in Standard. I mean, you've got the tri-lands. You can gain life from your lands if you want to. And one of the weird tensions that's going to happen is, do you want your lands to be slow or painful? Right? You can play, comes into play tap lands like the tri-lands and the scry lands, where, okay, it came into play tapped, or you can go to the fetch land, pain land, you know, that side of things, where your land can be painful but available right away. So just having all of those options, that's one of the reasons the format is as wide open as it is. And you know, the tri-lands, I do think they're going to show up in here and there. They're going to show up. They're going to let you turn on all of those sort of 3-color gold goodies that Khans has brought to play. You know, probably not the best lands in the set, not the best lands in Standard, but sort of an important piece.
And are they going to be things that we see deck lists with one of this one of the other in a deck list, as opposed to 4 Nomad Outpost up front kind of thing?
Yeah, you should look for mana bases. They're going to be things like, okay, I've got, you know, 4 fetch lands, 2 of this basic, 2 of that basic, you know, 3 pain lands, 2 of this scry land, 2 of that scry land. Like, you can have a lot of, building the mana bases in this format is tricky because there's so many different options, and it really is, you know, how much pain can you afford to take? Part of that is a function of your deck. Part of that is also a function of the field that you expect to show up. You know, are people going to show up with Bloodsoaked Champions? You know, you don't want to take that much pain from your land if people are attacking you right away with Bloodsoaked Champions. But, you know, if people are maybe digging through time, then whatever. You got all day.
Tri-lands at 10. In we go to number 9, please. And it is, oh, ta-da, Dig Through Time.
Yeah. If there's a control deck, it's because of this card. You know, this card, I mean, it's not Sphinx's Revelation, but it is good enough that you're willing to play bad blue cards to get to draw cards with this thing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of. I mean,
Sphinx's Revelation is so ridiculous that it almost didn't matter what the rest of the blue cards were. You're gonna be you get to draw so many of them with Sphinx's Revelation.
Perfectly reasonable card. What are you talking about?
Look, I'm happy to draw cards and gain life, but I mean, this is the quote-unquote replacement. It definitely plays a very similar role. It gives you that late-game card advantage and the selectivity. I mean, drawing 2 of 7, that's a lot of selection. I know people are super excited about the Treasure Cruise, being able to just draw 3, especially in some of the Eternal formats. You know, this effect is significantly better than draw 3 cards. I mean, you look at this, it's how do you parse it, right? It's all this mana. Look at 7, keep 2. Like, this is better than draw 3 cards. I'd much rather look at 7 and choose 2 than just draw 3 blind. So it's a very powerful effect. You know, once the control deck gets to the point where it can start casting these, it's gonna win. You know, not quite as quickly or as, you know, rock solid impossible to come back from as a Sphinx's Revelation, but playing a similar role.
All right, look forward to getting those then. Dig Through Time for me, thank you. Number 8, it's Crater's Claws. X with upside.
Yeah, no, this makes the cut. The fact that that +2 is one of the better abilities that's been tacked onto one of these X spells. And the thing is, there's so many 4-power creatures that it's turned on a lot. Not only can you turn it on in sort of any random, you know, teamer, it's kind of the ferocious teamer mechanic, but the other place I think you'll see this, and probably the place it'll show up even more, is in a green devotion list, where, you know, you dump your hand with thanks to Nykthos, and then you're looking for something to do with all that Nykthos mana. Now that Nykthos is generating, you know, 10, 12, maybe 20 mana, just splash a little red in your green devotion list. So it'll give you something to do with all that Nykthos mana.
Yeah, I can think if I had 20 mana spare plus a red, I could add up to something
that will happen.
quite...
That was going to happen. Somebody is going to get Crater's Claws out from 20 by Green Devotion deck.
It's almost worth having that happen to you to be able to tell the story that happened to you, especially if it's like in game 2 and you win the match anyway.
Sure.
All right, at number 7 we have Sidisi Brood Tyrant.
Yeah, the Delve decks are super powerful. You know, Sidisi, the fact that Sidisi gets these creatures into play, you start turning on things like Satyr Wayfinder, right? You've seen these green-black graveyard decks running around Standard for a little while. I can use Wayfinder, I can commune with the gods, I can sort of play these 2-mana cards that kind of incidentally put things into my graveyard and, you know, kind of get me the card that I need to keep going. What if Sidisi's in play as you're Satyr Wayfindering and communing with the gods and sort of building up your graveyard to do these graveyard things? Suddenly you're just also getting a bunch of zombies. It's a pretty powerful effect. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, you know, where she ultimately winds up in the Khans list is going to come down to how good that Sultai Delve deck actually is. But I think it's good. I think it's good. I think it's definitely good enough to show up. It's good enough to make it to Sunday. We'll find out.
Absolutely. All right, we are into our top 6 here in our prediction for the standard world coming your way. Fetchland cycle, what lovely, lovely cards.
Oh yeah, great cards. It'd be a little boring to put them much higher on the list. And the interesting thing about the fetchlands, I think they're not actually as important to standard as they are to, say, modern.
Okay.
Because there's so many other options, and you don't have shocklands to go get with them. So like you're either getting a mountain or you're getting a swamp. Like you're only getting basic lands with them.
Right.
So they're still good. I mean, they're still definitely one of the options. And if you want your mana, if you're willing to take pain in order to have your lands come into play untapped, you know, this is one of the land cycles you absolutely want. They're absolutely crucial to standard. But it's not like they're going to dominate standard, all the mana bases the way they do in modern. You know who they are good with though?
Go on.
Courser of Crufix.
Huh. Yes.
Like mono green lists will play fetch lands because the synergy with Courser is so good. Like instead of paying a life to get a land, what if you gained a life to get a land?
Woohoo!
Yeah, it's better. Oh, and the ability to reshuffle while Courser's in play. I mean, I could have inched them up a little bit because you know they're going to come up and you know they're good in the Courser decks. The ability to reshuffle when you don't like the card that's on top is super powerful, and the life gain is also nice.
We've had tri-lands, we've had Dig Through Time, Kratos Claws, we've had the fetch lands. People want big, powerful, meaty creatures, Randy. And because it's the Pro Tour, they want efficiency too. Give it to them.
How about Siege Rhino?
Done.
Yeah, how about it? 4/5 for 4, drain 3 life. Oh, by the way, trample. Yeah, this is just kind of everything that you want to be doing with sort of this medium to large creature, right? I mean, I want to call him medium, but he's not medium. He's huge. The mana cost is the mid-rangey part.
Yes, that's the only bit that isn't actually
The part
huge.
that's medium-sized is, yeah, the 4 mana. So, I mean, this is definitely going to bring decks into the field. I think people are going to be playing white and black and green mana. I mean, it sort of becomes like, which creatures are you playing? Which colors do you want to add into your Courser Caryatid deck? Well, Siege Rhino is the reason to go into white, basically.
The one thing that doesn't do is protect itself. Like most creatures, it sits there doing its thing, and if you have an answer, you have an answer. In Khans, there have been a lot of very powerful answers printed for creatures. Let's take a look at one of them now at number 4.
Yeah, Murderous Cut is super efficient. I mean, you say, what, you know, we want a good rate. We want efficiency. How about kill that for 1 mana? This is going to show up for all the time that it's standard legal. It's good enough to start showing up in older formats as well. This is just a super efficient card. And it's not like you don't need to be doing anything special to get cards into your graveyard. You just randomly play a game of Magic. You're going to wind up with some cards in your graveyard, especially if you've got a fetch land-based mana base. So Murderous Cut usually only costs 1. That's the first one in particular is only going to cost 1. You have to make sure not to put too many Delve cards in your list. Like he's not best friends with Dig Through Time, for example.
Sure.
But very efficient card. Does kill Siege Rhino, but whatever. You just run the Siege Rhino. It's like the Savage Knuckleblade story we were talking about. Just play it. Force them to answer it. You know, they either spend one of their premium removal spells answering your big creature, or you get to attack them. Anyway, that's definitely a lot of what you're going to see this weekend, I think, is big monsters and then answers to those big monsters and games that kind of go a while for that reason.
Okay, now traditionally, Planeswalkers have always been a big part of constructed formats and limited too. Here's our number 3. It is a Planeswalker, Sarkhan the Dragon Speaker.
Yeah, he's in such a good spot in this format. The fact that he can come down and fly over anything that happens to be coming up the ground and deal 4 damage, it matches up super well against Elspeth in particular. Like all those Elspeths that have been, you know, blowing up your big creatures and annoying you for the last however long in Standard, just kill them with Sarkhan. No problem. Attack, go to the air, and she can't do anything about him. Like, she just can't defend herself from Sarkhan. And Sarkhan's pretty good at killing players, too.
Yes.
I mean, in a similar spot to Stormbreath Dragon.
Okay.
I mean, I think that, you know, he does live on a very similar spot. Most of the decks that have had Stormbreath Dragons, I think you're going to wind up wanting a mix. Like, Stormbreath Dragons pro white is still good, but Sarkhan's also good. Like, maybe it's a couple Sarkhans and then go to Stormbreaths. So you can't play multiple Sarkhans at the same time. But, I mean, going to be a player, you know, anybody who's got the ability to cast Sarkhan will want to.
All right, that's number 3. What is number 2? Mantis Rider.
Yeah, I've got Mantis Rider him. The Jeskai decks, when you play Mantis Rider on turn 3, that Jeskai deck is so good. I mean, the only problem with the archetype is that when you don't actually have the Mantis Rider, maybe your deck's a little clunky, maybe your deck's a little fragile, you know, you start trying to stitch things together, but Mantis Rider is so good that it's got people playing sort of aggressive Jeskai decks, single-handedly, all by itself. Just 3 mana, 3 power, flying, haste, vigilance. Every word on that card matters, and every word on that card is just, Yeah, efficient.
Is
hard hitting.
Jeskai where you see aggro being if there is a sort of a swell towards aggro at the PT this weekend?
Well, there's kind of like the most aggressive decks will be the sort of Bloodsoaked Champion, the Jackal Pups decks.
Right.
Whether that's red with like Rabblemaster at the top of a curve of aggressive red weenies, or whether it's black. I mean, Rabblemaster, that's where he goes, right? He goes on the top of the curve.
Yeah.
For that deck. So I mean, I think you can play red aggro, you can play black aggro, and you can go to Jeskai. Jeskai's kind of the new aggro deck, I guess you will. And it is, you can call it tempo. I don't know what tempo means in that context. It's a beatdown deck. It's just like, I'm willing to pay a little bit extra mana to get my stuff to the air and fly over your blockers.
Flying could really matter. We are down to number 1. What have you chosen for the number 1 potential card for Standard?
Yeah, it's hard to pick a number 1 in a set this deep.
Yes.
But I decided to go with a sexy one. Butcher of the Horde. This guy is gigantic. 5/4 flying for 4. Like, I'm sold.
Can I just?
I'm in.
I need to check with you just to back up a minute.
Okay.
The sexy one. You're talking in gameplay mechanics, because I would hate to think that was a flavor reference there.
Correct.
Good
Like,
to know.
5/4 flying. Sack a creature to gain those abilities. Here's the thing that, when I picture Butcher the Horde and I get excited about having the opportunity to play with this guy, I usually in my head have played Goblin Rabblemaster on turn 3. Like,
right.
You play Goblin Rabblemaster, I mean, one of the best leftover cards in Standard from my list, right? You play Goblin Rabblemaster on turn 3, maybe your token Suicides, maybe your token, if you have the token left over, suddenly you get to give this guy haste on turn 4, and then if you want to, you make another token, you can give him Lifelink or Vigilance. Like, those abilities get turned on. There's enough cards that throw out random tokens, Rabblemaster being the best of them, that like, that second ability may look like, oh no, I'm not gonna sack my creatures for this. No, you're gonna sack your Goblin that had to attack into a Courser anyway? Absolutely. The other thing you get with the Butcher is you get to play with Thoughtseize. Like, you get to play with Thoughtseize, you get to play with Goblin Rabblemaster, and you get to fly over with 5/4 flying.
Can't say fairer than that. Randy Buehler, the Hall of Fame. We're gearing up for Standard. Will Butcher of the Horde be number 1? Well, we are about to find out, because lunchtime's nearly over, and that means Standard time is just around the corner.